Hey everyone, it's Lexie. So in today's video I'll be sharing with you all the books that I ended up reading in the month of March. So I read a total of 4 books, half of which were audiobooks. And I will say compared to other months, this was my lowest books read this year so far. And I think it's just because a lot of the books that I read that I found to be a little bit slow paced, or I wasn't as interested, or it just took me a while to kind of read through. And I think part of it is due to the stress because I have to do my dissertation defense on April 14th, so I've just been really stressed and tired, and a lot of these books were a little bit dense and just slow paced, and yeah, I wasn't feeling the reading this month, so which is okay. But I think after my defense, I think I will definitely get back into enjoying reading a little bit more. 2 of these books too were also nonfiction as well, which I enjoyed, so they're kind of all over in terms of genre. So without further ado, let's get started. So first up we have In There Was Light by John Meacham, and this is basically a nonfiction book about Abraham Lincoln, his life, and ultimately his presidency and assassination. And in grade 7, because when we first moved to the States, we were living in Chicago, so we did a unit on the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln, and then we would take a trip to Springfield where you got to go visit his house and the museum there. So I was in grade 7, I've always just been really fascinated with the Civil War and just Abraham Lincoln in general. So when I saw this book it was available on audiobook from the library, I was very, very excited because, like I said, I've always been kind of a nerd about that stuff, and this one definitely goes more in depth with Abraham Lincoln. I feel like at school you're kind of told the angelic hero savior of the United States, no one can touch Abraham Lincoln, and this one kind of painted a more realistic portrait of who he was as a person, where he kind of wavered on his beliefs on slavery and whether or not Black people should be seen as equal. And I really like kind of that realistic view of him and providing showing all sides to him, because like I said, I feel like he's very much glorified from an American school history point of view. So it was very interesting kind of get to see kind of the unfiltered version of him, which I thought was, like I said, I really enjoyed. I did find this book to be a little bit slow. It does lead very heavily on kind of religion, and integrating a lot of scripture, I guess you call it. I really, like I said, I'm not very religious, so I don't know into it, which I did find to be a little bit boring. But I did, like I said, I learned a lot, and one thing I wish the pacing was a little bit better. Like I said, it was you'd get a lot of religious stuff, and I just wanted more of the actual history. And I did wish there was a little bit more time spent kind of in his last days and the assassination and everything like that. I felt that part was very much glossed over compared to the detail that went into everything else. But overall I gave this a 4 out of 5 stars. I think because the author was narrating this one, usually for nonfiction I don't mind if the author is narrating, but I think this one he read so slow, and I was listening it at 1.75 speed and it still was slow. So I think if I maybe had read it as a book, maybe I would have enjoyed it a little bit more. But overall, like I said, I really enjoyed this, and I think once I'm kind of outside of my book buying ban next year, I think I would get a hard copy of this one. So next up we have Book Lovers by Emily Henry. This one I will say is my favorite out of the Emily Henry books. There is some tropes and miscommunication stuff that I do find annoying, but this one I will say was my favorite out of all of them. This one follows Nora, whose life is just all books. She's a literary agent, and her sister convinces her to take somewhat of a vacation in this small town, where she ends up crossing paths with her work nemesis, and obviously they fall in love, and it kind of goes from there. This one, like I said, it was my favorite. I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. There are parts I really loved the banter between the 2 characters and finding them kind of slowly fall in love. I really liked kind of those aspects, and the small town charm and that stuff. I really loved that setting and kind of that trope. But the sister in here I found to be very immature and annoying, and I felt that kind of took away from the main part of here. And again, with all Emily Henry books, there's always some sort of parental trauma, or one parent's dead or both the parents are dead or something like that, and it just gets a little bit too much in it. So it's kind of like Disney parents where either they're orphans or like one parent is dead. It's kind of like that, where it's just like it kind of takes away from like the rom-com side of this. But yeah, like I said, this one was like, I enjoyed it. It was probably the one I enjoyed the most. Like I said, there were some like nitpicky things. It was like cliche, I'm looking at my notes here, cliche, and there were convenient plot devices where a lot of the times like they would be like close to kissing and then like her phone would ring, and this happened several times, and it was just kind of annoying after the third or fourth time where this happened. So yeah, that part was like annoying, and there's just some things I didn't enjoy, but like overall I really liked the relationship build up. I love the banter. I like how it was centered around people that like love books, so I did love that. But Libby, the sister, was just so annoying, and I felt like she didn't really add much. She like took away a lot from the plot, so I didn't feel like she was a necessary character. But overall, like I said, my favorite of the Emily Henrys, but I'm like not blown away. I don't understand why they're so popular. Like, they're fun, but they're not mind-blowing. I think the Brown Sisters trilogy by Talia Hibbert is much better than these ones. Next up, I have Cultish, and this was another book that I listened to on audiobook, and it talks about the language of cults. So when you think about why some people are kind of drawn to cults and like what do cult leaders use in terms of their language to kind of draw people in, it kind of goes into that. I will say it doesn't really despite kind of the title being like it focusing on the language, I would say it's 90% talking about different cults, and maybe even, like, I'm being generous saying 10% was actually focusing on like the linguistics and language choices that are kind of used by a lot of cults, which I did find disappointing because I did want to learn more about that, but I felt like it was just more of like a general synopsis of different cults, and then it was just kind of on the back burner. So I did find the title to be misleading, and I don't really say how you can like create a book basically promising it'll be like, oh, you'll learn more about this in this chapter, but you never really do. But despite that, I did really enjoy kind of learning about different cults. It was just as like, I always have been like fascinated by that thing, so finding it kind of how it's kind of gained popularity in the 70s and like ones that are kind of around now, different forms of it. So I like multi-level marketing in particular. I didn't know Tupperware was part of that, but like, you know, CrossFit, all those like kind of modern day ones that are kind of somewhat like a cult, was interesting learning about it. But if you're wanting to get more of like the language behind cults, you're not going to get it here. But if you want to get like a general, you know, synopsis of cults, I think this is a good book for that. So I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Like I said, I did enjoy it, but it doesn't give you what it promises in terms of the linguistic language sides of cults. And lastly, I have Hellbent by Leigh Bardugo. This is the reason why I didn't get through very many books, because it took me nearly 2 weeks to read this one. And this is the sequel to Ninth House, and basically we follow Alex, who is kind of comes from a rough background. She has a history of kind of being with drugs and violence, but she ends up getting recruited by Leith, which is the house that oversees all of the secret societies, because she has this ability to see ghosts. So she's kind of like the governing body that makes sure all the secret societies are behaving, and so it kind of goes off from there. This being the sequel, I don't want to spoil any of the plot points, but I will say like the part of the reason why it took me so long is because I will say the first half of the book is very slow. There's really not a lot of going on, but once I got to the second half where the plot starts to pick up, I was really invested, and I really enjoyed that. Like, it was very fast paced. I just felt like it was like I was along for the ride. I was really invested at that point, but kind of getting through the halfway point was a little bit slow, and so that's why I gave this one a 3.5 out of 5 stars. The parts that I did enjoy that were fast paced, you know, I was just really invested in what was going on, I really enjoyed, but kind of getting there, this is a very slow burn. And that was kind of like my critique with Ninth House as well, where it does start out very slow and it gradually picks up, but at this point it was just very slow. which was, you know, some people like that, but for me it was just a little bit, that's why it kind of took me a little bit to kind of get through. And I feel like my brain cells, like I've been running on like low steam just with how, you know, like how intensely I've been focusing on my dissertation. So it was just at times a little bit too dry for me, but I did really love the action-packed things. I do have like some like the pacing was for me the biggest issue of this. If the pacing was a little bit better, if it wasn't so slow in the beginning, I think I would have enjoyed this, but I enjoyed it a little bit more. But nevertheless, I still really enjoyed this. I do really like the series of like this dark academia focusing on kind of the secret occult societies at Yale. Like I do think that she does a really good job kind of showcasing that setting and utilizing that dark academia with the themes of this one as well. And I did find like some parts to be a little bit confusing with like some of the occult magic that was going on, or the second half of the book where other things are going on that I don't want to spoil, and just some plot points again were just a little bit too convenient, but I was able to kind of look past that because like I said, the second half I really enjoyed. It was just the first part that just felt like I was like swimming through molasses to get to that point. But yeah, I definitely will continue on with this series, but yeah, it's just a little bit, the pacing needs to be sorted out a little bit better, I think. So that's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know in the comments below what books you read this month and all of that fun stuff. So yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye, guys.